She bit me, ran off, and I still couldn't stop crying because something in her eyes begged me to follow. It was 6:02 in the morning, and Dr. Nathan Kessler hadn't even taken his first sip of coffee when the call came in. The local animal control office had picked up a stray puppy wandering behind the Cedar Grove Community Center. That wasn't out of the ordinary. What was strange was that she refused to be taken in. She dodged every attempt at coaxing, growled when cornered, and when a volunteer finally got a leash around her, she managed to slip it within seconds. She wasn't aggressive in the way dangerous dogs could be. She just didn't want help. Nathan slid into his boots and jacket with a sigh. He lived just a short drive from the clinic, and in a town like Buckfield, Colorado, everyone knew where to find the town vet. He'd already treated chickens in backyards, pulled porcupine quills from a curious Labrador's snout, and patched up barn cats too mean to die. But this call had a strange urgency to it. Something about the tone of the dispatcher, something about how they kept repeating, "She won't come in. She keeps coming back, but she won't let anyone near." By the time he arrived, the pup was perched atop a muddy hill behind the center, staring down at the group below her like a little monarch on a throne of wet grass and leaves. She looked no older than 6 or 7 months, mud-caked, drenched, and shaking from the cold, yet alert. Her fur was a strange patchwork of tan and white, but clumped in a way that suggested it hadn't seen a brush in weeks. Nathan moved slowly, crouched, and extended a small cube of beef jerky. She blinked, then bolted. Not far, just 10 yards downhill before she stopped, turned, and sat, as if waiting. "She wants you to follow," whispered one of the volunteers. "She did that with me, too. She won't come close, but she waits if you come after." So Nathan followed, slipping in mud, dodging briars, until he was deep into the woods behind the rec center. The puppy moved with purpose, not wild, not random. She led him a good half-mile before stopping under a thicket of pine and scratching the ground. There, just beyond where the pine needles thickened, lay a mound, barely noticeable unless you were looking. Nathan stepped closer, and that's when he saw the rusted handle. An old animal carrier. The door was cracked open. Inside, barely visible, were the remains of a shredded blanket, a moldy chew toy, and a disintegrating collar. The puppy shoved her nose inside, whined, then backed away and sat down, staring at Nathan. He crouched and whispered, "Is this where they left you?" She didn't move. He didn't press further. He opened a tin of wet food from his kit, set it beside the carrier, and backed away. The puppy waited a full minute before inching forward to eat. Nathan remained still, barely breathing. Her fur clumped and curled oddly as she moved. There was something unnatural in its texture, like there was something beneath it. But for now, he focused on just being near. It took 2 more hours and another meal before she allowed him to put a looped leash over her head. And even then, it was more like she permitted it than surrendered. Her body was tense, tail low, eyes flicking to the trees. "You have a secret," he murmured. "I can feel it." Back at the clinic, Nathan moved gently. She refused to go in a kennel, snapping and barking the moment the door closed behind her. So he left her crate open in the exam room and sat beside it. She crept out, eventually curling up on the cool floor, but always keeping one eye open. It was only when he finally touched her back to begin an exam that she let out a pained yelp and bit at the air. He froze. Not from the bite, which didn't land, but from what he felt under her fur. He lifted the outer layer with gloved fingers and gasped. The skin beneath her shoulder was scarred and raw, but not from recent injury, more like layers of something that had been adhered to her fur. His fingers found a thin wire. He traced it and discovered a plastic tube threaded just under the fur, knotted and looped like someone had tried to sew something onto her. "Who did this to you?" Over the next hour, Nathan carefully cut away clumps of fur and freed a strange series of zip ties, adhesive fabric, and bits of tubing and plastic. Someone had fitted the puppy with what looked like a homemade harness beneath her fur. It had partially fused with her coat as she grew. That explained the pain. Every movement tugged at old wounds. There were no identifying tags, no chip, no tattoo. Just the mess she carried on her back, and a look in her eyes that said she'd been surviving for far too long on her own. He named her Junie. It wasn't clear why. It just felt right. Maybe because she looked like a dog meant to bloom in springtime. The first week was rough. She didn't eat unless Nathan sat on the floor beside her. She wouldn't go near the kennel. She refused to wear even a soft cloth collar. But she would lie beside him at night, curled in a ball by his recliner, breathing softly until sleep took her. As her fur began to grow back in clean and unburdened, Nathan saw the dog she was meant to be. Playful, fast, with a natural herding instinct. She'd chase a soccer ball around the backyard like her life depended on it, then sit proudly beside it as if expecting applause. One afternoon, a little girl named Allie from up the road wandered into the clinic looking for her lost kitten. She wore a bright pink backpack and mismatched socks. Junie, who usually kept clear of new people, walked up to her slowly and sat. Allie blinked. "Hi, are you a nice dog?" Junie gently touched her nose to the girl's hand. Nathan watched, puzzled. That was the first time she approached anyone unprompted. Allie sat on the floor, cross-legged, talking in a whisper only Junie seemed to understand. When Allie's mother came to fetch her, Junie followed them all the way to the door. "She likes her," Nathan said aloud, half to himself. "That's new?" That night, he reviewed the files again. Something about the way the tubing was embedded under her fur stuck with him. He sent photos to a colleague in Denver who specialized in animal prosthetics and rescue cases. The reply came the next morning. That harness had been used in a training experiment, one not legally sanctioned. It was meant to deliver small shocks or rewards based on remote control input. Nathan felt sick. Someone had turned Junie into a project, not a pet, not a companion, a test. He looked at her lying on the clinic floor, chewing happily on a tennis ball. She caught him watching and wagged her tail. "They tried to make you a machine," he whispered. "But you're not. You're more alive than most people I know." Outside, snow began to fall. The world went quiet. And for the first time since she had bolted into the woods, Junie didn't flinch at the sound of the door closing. She simply curled beside it, waiting. Nathan knew the hard part wasn't over. There would be questions, maybe authorities involved, but that could wait. For now, the puppy who had refused shelter had chosen a place to stay. The sun hadn't fully risen when Junie bolted past the front desk and out the door. Nathan had been unlocking the side gate when he heard the familiar scuffle of paws, followed by the jingle of her ID tag. Before he could call her back, she was already across the lot, making a beeline for the sidewalk. Not frantic, not scared, just determined. "Junie!" he called. But she didn't slow. With a muttered apology to the landscaper waiting by the fence, Nathan jogged after her, boots thudding against damp asphalt. She turned at the intersection and trotted toward the elementary school 3 blocks down. Nathan had seen this behavior once before. 2 days ago, when Allie had visited again with her mother to thank him for finding their kitten. Junie had sat by the window for an hour afterward, ears up, eyes tracking every car that passed. Now she led him to the schoolyard. It was early yet, just before first bell. The playground was still mostly empty, save for a few teachers chatting near the entrance and 2 boys tossing a football in the far field. Junie slowed to a walk and sniffed along the fence line. She gave a soft bark. Nathan reached her just as a small voice rang out. "Junie!" Allie stood by the front gate, her backpack slung over one shoulder, a crumpled drawing in her hand. Junie ran to her. The teachers glanced up but didn't intervene. One of them gave a quick wave in Nathan's direction. Allie bent down to show Junie the paper. "I drew you," she said. "You have wings in this one. You fly and save all the puppies who are sad." Junie licked her cheek. Nathan caught up, breathing harder than he wanted to admit. "Sorry about that," he said to the teacher nearest him, a tall woman with shoulder-length blonde hair and a clipboard tucked under one arm. "She got out before I could leash her." "We don't mind," the teacher said kindly. "She's been here a few times now. Always shows up right before the first bell. She never goes inside the fence, though. Just waits." Nathan watched as Allie hugged Junie around the neck. "Do you want me to bring her by sometime? For a proper visit?" "We'd love that," the teacher said. Junie didn't fight when Nathan slipped on the leash. She looked back only once as the bell rang and the children filed into the building. Her ears drooped when Allie disappeared inside. That afternoon, Nathan started taking her with him on errands, not just around the clinic, but into town, short trips to the post office, the bakery, the park. She rode in the passenger seat with her nose pressed to the cracked window, tail thumping whenever a child passed by. Over time, her stiffness eased. She greeted neighbors with cautious sniffs and accepted treats from the older women who cooed over her. She didn't like loud noises or fast hand movements, but she no longer cowered under tables or growled at the sound of crates being opened. It was on one of those afternoon drives that they ran into an unexpected clue. Nathan had stopped by the local hardware store to pick up supplies for a leaky pipe in the clinic's bathroom. Junie waited in the truck with the windows down, nose twitching as customers passed. A man walking toward the store with a box under his arm froze when he saw her. Nathan didn't notice at first, but Junie did. She let out a low, uncertain bark and slunk down behind the dashboard. "Hey there," the man said cautiously. "That your dog?" Nathan looked up. The man was about 40, wiry build, jeans stained with paint or engine grease. His baseball cap shaded his face, but not enough to hide the tension in his jaw. "Yep," Nathan replied evenly. "Name's Junie. She's a rescue." The man gave a short nod and kept walking. Junie didn't move until he was out of sight. Even then, she remained curled tightly against the seat. Nathan frowned. That night, he reviewed the photos he'd taken of the harness embedded in her fur. Something about that man's reaction didn't sit right. He couldn't prove anything, couldn't even be sure. But Junie had shown fear like that only once before, when the metal tweezers got caught on a knot of plastic by her shoulder. He reported the encounter to the sheriff's office. Quietly, just in case. Days turned into weeks. Junie grew stronger, more confident. Her coat filled out. Her eyes brightened. She even started sleeping in her crate by choice, door wide open. Nathan no longer needed to bribe her to eat or coax her into walks. She led the way. Allie visited often. Her mother brought her by after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes with a new drawing or story. One day she showed up with a tiny green cape made of felt and string. She's a superhero, Allie explained. She saves animals, but I think she needs a team. Nathan smiled. Like the Puppy League? Allie beamed. Exactly. She's Captain Tailwag. Junie wore the cape for 5 whole minutes before managing to chew it off. Still, she didn't run when Allie reached to tie it. That meant something. Then came the interview. Local journalist Susan Daly stopped by the clinic one rainy Thursday, notepad in hand and camera slung over her shoulder. She had heard about the dog with the strange past and wanted to write a feel-good feature for the county paper. Nathan was hesitant, but agreed. He made her promise not to publish anything that could tip off whoever had originally hurt Junie. Names were left out. The photos showed Junie curled by the fireplace, her new tag gleaming. The article ran under the title, "From Stray to Star, Junie's Journey to Healing." 2 days later, the clinic phone rang. A woman named Diane Miller wanted to know more about Junie. She claimed to be a volunteer with a shelter in a neighboring state. She said she recognized the description, said a similar dog had gone missing from their facility months ago after a break-in. She had been part of a litter we rescued from an illegal breeder, Diane explained. There were 7 of them, all microchipped, but the chips were removed later. Junie was the smallest. Nathan asked for records, photos, anything. The email came within the hour, and there she was, smaller, with shorter fur and ears too big for her head. But it was her. He stared at the screen. Junie had a past he hadn't even begun to uncover. He called the sheriff. Again. This time with new information. The investigation reopened. Quietly. But now it had direction. That night, Nathan sat beside Junie on the clinic porch, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, a mug of cocoa in hand. "You're not just any rescue," he murmured. "You've been through more than I thought, and you still wag your tail. Still trust. Somehow." Junie leaned her head against his knee. He didn't know what would come next. Whether Diane's information would lead to arrests. Whether someone would show up claiming to take her back. But he knew one thing. Junie wasn't going anywhere without a fight. Nathan woke to the sound of claws tapping lightly on the floorboards. The morning light filtered through the curtain edges as Junie padded into the bedroom with a sock dangling from her mouth. It was his sock, of course. Her favorite, apparently. "You're building quite the collection," he muttered, reaching for it. She darted away, tail wagging, head low in play mode. Mornings had settled into a rhythm. Junie would wake first, nudge open his bedroom door, and select an item to parade through the house. One day it was a towel, another, a slipper. Never chewed, just relocated. She'd drop it near his recliner or water bowl like an offering, then sit back to watch him notice. Today was different, though. Something buzzed under the surface, a nervous energy in the air. Nathan had a call scheduled with the sheriff's office. They'd followed up with the shelter Diane mentioned, cross-checked records, and found evidence of other missing dogs, at least 4 from that same break-in. The people involved had disappeared months ago, but one name stood out. Jared Coleman. The same man Nathan had seen near the hardware store. He fed Junie and poured himself coffee, stomach tight as the clock ticked toward 10. When the call finally came, Sheriff Blake sounded more serious than usual. "We've got surveillance footage from a rest stop in Utah. Shows Coleman with a crate matching the one you found in the woods. It was filmed 2 days before your first sighting of Junie." Nathan sat down hard. "So she escaped during transport?" "Looks that way. There's a warrant out for him now, transporting animals across state lines without permits. Illegal devices found at his last location. He's on the radar. Do we know if he's looking for her? Not yet, but keep an eye out. We've alerted nearby shelters and clinics. Nathan thanked him, hung up, and looked at Junie. She was sprawled across the rug with a chewed plush toy under one paw. Looks like your past is still trying to catch up, kid. He didn't say it with fear. Just resolve. She was safe now, at least for the moment. That afternoon, Allie and her mom stopped by again. The little girl had started bringing chapter books to read aloud while Junie listened. Today, it was a story about a lost pony who finds its way home. Do you think Junie remembers where her home was before? Allie asked between chapters. Nathan hesitated. I think she remembers parts of it, but I think she likes this home better. Allie smiled and gave Junie a pat. Me too. Later that week, Nathan and Junie visited the farm supply store on the edge of town. It had become one of her favorite places. Wide aisles, friendly faces, and the constant smell of feed and hay. Junie would walk beside the cart with her tail high, greeting employees like old friends. As they reached the checkout counter, the clerk looked up and grinned. Doc Kessler, that pup of yours is famous now. Saw her in the paper. People been asking about her. She's adjusting well, Nathan replied. The clerk handed him his receipt, then leaned in slightly. Some guy was in here yesterday. Tall, beard, cap pulled down low. Asked if I'd seen a tan dog with a white patch on her back. Matched her description. Said he was looking for his lost hunting dog. Didn't say Junie, but just thought you should know. Nathan felt a cold knot in his chest. Did he say his name? Didn't ask. Just left quick when I said I hadn't seen anything. That night, Nathan installed a second lock on the clinic's back door and rigged a motion sensor by the side gate. He told himself it was precautionary. He told himself he wasn't scared. But he didn't sleep easy. The next few days passed quietly. Junie played in the yard, lounged on the clinic porch, and greeted patients with calm confidence. She had grown comfortable with the routine. Feedings, walks, her favorite blanket by the fireplace. Nathan found himself checking the motion sensor every morning, even though it never tripped. Then came the storm. A late spring squall rolled over the mountains with little warning. Lightning cracked over Buckfield like a whip, and the wind sent trash bins skittering across driveways. The power flickered twice, then went out. Junie cowered under Nathan's desk. Her body trembled with each thunderclap. He set a lantern on the counter and pulled her blanket close. It's just noise, he whispered, kneeling beside her. You're safe. I've got you. The wind howled until midnight. Trees bent outside the clinic window, branches scraping against the siding like fingers. Nathan stayed on the floor with Junie, one hand resting on her back until she finally fell asleep. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the town had not escaped unscathed. A tree had fallen across the side road near the clinic, blocking traffic. Several homes had minor flooding. The power company sent crews to inspect lines, and neighbors came by to check on each other. In the lull of cleanup, Nathan received a call from a private number. He almost didn't answer. You got my dog, said the voice. Flat, male, no introduction. I think you've got the wrong number, Nathan replied evenly. Tan coat, white on the back. She's mine. Nathan's heart pounded. If you're talking about the dog I rescued, she's under my care. You can contact the sheriff's office if you believe. She was trained for tracking. You took her. That's theft. The line went dead. Nathan sat frozen, phone still in hand. That afternoon, he drove to the sheriff's office with a printout of the call log and his notes from the store visit. Sheriff Blake reviewed everything carefully. If this guy tries to come near you or Junie again, call me right away. But we've got nothing concrete to tie him to a specific incident yet. He didn't say her name. Didn't give proof of ownership. Nathan nodded. I'm just worried he's not going to wait for paperwork. The sheriff's jaw tightened. We'll increase patrols near the clinic for a while, just to be safe. Nathan thanked him and left. Junie waited in the truck, nose pressed to the window as usual. She wagged her tail when she saw him. He couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. A week passed without incident. Then 2. Junie returned to her morning routine. Allie came by with a hand-drawn map labeled Operation Dog Park, detailing her plans for a magical playground just for Junie and friends. The town started referring to Junie as the honorary mascot of Buckfield. Someone even painted her likeness on the side of the town library in a mural about second chances. Nathan tried to relax. One morning, as he cleaned out the clinic fridge, a box caught his eye. It hadn't been there the day before. Small, unmarked. He opened it cautiously. Inside were photos, dozens of them. All of Junie. Some from weeks ago. Some from just days earlier. Different locations, different angles, all clearly taken from afar. Nathan's hands shook. Taped to the lid was a note. She's not yours. Nathan stood over the open box. The photographs spread across the counter like fallen leaves. Junie sat at his feet, sensing the shift in his mood. She let out a quiet whine, nudging his leg with her nose. He dropped a hand to her head, absently stroking behind her ears while his eyes scanned image after image. They weren't just casual snapshots. Some were taken from low angles, like someone had crouched in the bushes. Others were from a distance, blurry but clearly focused on her distinctive white patch. There were shots of Junie playing in the yard, resting in the clinic window, walking beside Allie down the school sidewalk. Someone had been watching her for weeks. Nathan's first instinct was to call the sheriff. His second was to lock every door in the building. He did both. Sheriff Blake arrived within the hour. He wore a heavy coat, and his expression was stormy. "I'm not going to sugarcoat it," he said after a long pause. "This is stalking. Whoever left this box wanted to scare you. Wanted you to know they've been close." Nathan nodded, jaw clenched. "The note says she isn't mine, but there's no signature, no fingerprints." "Doesn't mean we can't work with it. I'll send the box to the lab. Maybe we'll get something from the tape or the paper." Junie had retreated under the reception desk. Her tail thumped once when Blake approached, but she stayed hidden. "Has anyone unusual come into the clinic recently?" the sheriff asked. "A few new faces, but nothing out of the ordinary. Just regular appointments. Junie hasn't reacted strongly to anyone?" Blake left promising patrols, a note in the county bulletin, and a phone call to the shelter in Utah. Nathan double-checked the locks again after he left. That evening, Nathan pulled out a cot and set it up in the back office. He wasn't going home. Not tonight. Not with someone stalking his clinic. Junie curled beside the cot without hesitation, her eyes following every shadow that danced across the wall. Sleep came in patches. Every sound outside snapped Nathan awake. Once, a raccoon knocked over a trash can near the alley. Another time, a car idled outside longer than it should have. He gripped his flashlight like a weapon and kept Junie close. Morning brought no answers. The box was gone to the lab. The security footage showed only the usual: cars driving by, the occasional dog walker, delivery trucks. No clear image of someone leaving the box. Nathan tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. He treated a limping tabby gave vaccines to a shepherd pup, and consulted with a local farmer about a sheep with skin issues. But the entire day felt like he was moving through fog. His eyes darted to windows. His ears picked up phantom footsteps. That night, Junie didn't sleep much either. She paced the clinic halls while Nathan reviewed old emails, scanned town records, anything that might tie someone to her past. Then came the knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just 2 quick raps on the clinic door after midnight. Nathan froze. Junie lifted her head and gave a low growl. He stood, grabbed the flashlight, and crept toward the door. He didn't open it, just peered through the small pane of glass. Nothing. No car. No figure. Just darkness. Until he looked down. On the doorstep lay another photo, this one more recent than the rest. It showed Junie sitting beside Allie outside the school. Dated 2 days prior. Nathan's blood ran cold. He picked it up carefully, slipped it into a folder, and locked the door again. The next morning, he called Allie's mother. Gently, cautiously, he asked if they'd noticed anything strange. She paused, then said yes. Someone had followed them home from the grocery store the day before. A dark-colored SUV, windows tinted. It had slowed when they turned down their street, then driven off without stopping. Nathan told her everything. She was silent for a long time, then asked if Junie was safe. "I won't let anything happen to her," he said. She asked if they should stop visiting. "No," Nathan said after a moment. "But maybe not the clinic for now. I'll bring Junie by the park instead. Somewhere public." That afternoon, Nathan drove Junie to the county fairgrounds. It was a wide open space, ideal for dog training classes and community events. Junie chased a ball across the grass, carefree in the sunshine. He watched her as if she might vanish. She didn't. But she did something curious. Toward the far edge of the field, she stopped chasing the ball and stared at the tree line. Her ears pricked, her nose lifted. Then she bolted. Nathan sprinted after her. She disappeared into the trees, silent and fast. He reached the edge of the woods just in time to hear a car door slam and tires peel out on the gravel road that circled behind the fairgrounds. Junie stood at the tree line, hackles raised. Nathan caught up, gasping. He looked around. Nothing but dust. Junie sniffed the ground and whined. Someone had been there. The next day, Nathan did something he hadn't considered before. He contacted a lawyer. He explained the situation, Junie's rescue, the investigation, the threats. The lawyer nodded gravely. "If someone tries to claim her, you need proof she's safer with you. Vet records, witness testimony, documentation of abuse or neglect. The more, the better." Nathan had all of that. He even printed every message, every note, every sheriff's report, just in case. The lawyer also gave him advice on ownership transfer across state lines. Technically, Junie could be considered abandoned property, especially with no identifying tags or chips at the time of rescue. But it depended on intent and on the paper trail. Nathan left the office with a file folder under one arm and Junie trailing at his side. That night, he sat in the clinic's back office and stared at a blank form titled Permanent Transfer of Ownership. He filled it out, signed it, dated it. It was time to make it official. The following week passed quietly. The sheriff hadn't received new threats. The lab was still processing the box. No strange cars appeared outside the clinic. Nathan tried to breathe easier. He took Junie hiking on one of the nearby trails, just the two of them, and the crunch of boots on dry leaves. She bounded ahead, but always circled back. He snapped a photo of her on a rock outcropping, the mountains behind her, tail wagging, tongue lolling. When they got home, he printed the photo and taped it above his desk. The caption in his mind was simple: free. But peace didn't last. 2 days later, the motion sensor by the side gate went off at 3:18 a.m. Nathan bolted out of bed. Junie was already up, ears up, body tense. He grabbed the flashlight and crept to the window. The gate hung open. The lock had been cut. Outside, he spotted boot prints in the mud. He followed them to the shed out back, where he kept medical crates and old clinic signage. One crate was missing. A tire mark led from the shed across the lawn and out through the alley. Nathan called the sheriff. Again. They dusted the area for prints. Found none. But it was clear. Someone had entered the property, stolen a crate, and tried to scare him. Or worse. Junie never left his side the entire day. Her behavior changed again. Watchful, alert. She no longer napped by the window. She slept by the door. Nathan installed cameras. The next time someone came, he'd have footage. But the next time never came. Instead, a package arrived. No return address, just a padded envelope with a single USB drive inside. He plugged it into the clinic computer, fingers tight around the mouse. The video was low resolution, but clear enough. It showed a man, dark clothes, baseball cap, tall build. He was in a basement or garage. Junie was in the corner, younger, smaller, shaking. The man barked commands. A buzzing sound followed. Junie flinched. He barked again. The buzz. Junie tried to stand. A shock pad strapped to her side flickered. Nathan slammed the laptop shut. He could barely breathe. She had been tortured. He sent the video to the sheriff, to the lawyer, to Diane at the shelter. This changed everything. The case moved from suspicious to criminal. But Junie didn't know any of that. All she knew was that Nathan held her close that night and didn't let go for a long, long time. Junie sat beside Nathan on the porch of the clinic, her head resting on his boot, eyes closed, but ears twitching at every sound. The summer air was thick with pine and dust, but Nathan hardly noticed. His thoughts raced too fast. He kept replaying the video in his mind, every cruel buzz of the device, every flinch of that tiny, confused body. That someone could do that to a puppy, any puppy, made his stomach twist with anger he rarely let himself feel. Sheriff Blake had come by earlier that day to take the USB drive for evidence. He left with a firm promise. This is enough. He's not getting away with it. Nathan wished he could believe that justice would come quickly. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be simple. Cases like this never were. And until there were charges, Junie wasn't truly safe. She stirred beside him, licking his hand gently, as if sensing his thoughts. "I know," he murmured. "I'm working on it." Later that week, Diane from the shelter called again. She'd reached out to a national network of animal welfare investigators, and several similar cases had surfaced. The descriptions matched Junie's experience: homemade devices, forced behavior training, dogs going missing. One case in particular stood out: a man using aliases to collect rescue dogs from Craigslist and shelter listings, then disappearing. Authorities suspected he was selling them or experimenting on them. It was a pattern, and Junie was part of it. Diane was organizing a task force. She asked if Nathan would allow Junie's story to be shared, anonymously at first, as part of a broader investigation. He hesitated for only a moment before saying yes. "If it helps stop this from happening to another dog," he said, "use whatever you need." The next day, a reporter from a larger regional newspaper reached out. She'd seen Susan Daly's original feature and wanted to write a follow-up. Nathan agreed on the condition that no personal addresses were included, no real-time updates shared, and Junie's current location kept vague. The article, published 3 days later, ran under the headline, "One Dog's Fight, From Trauma to Hope." Junie's story spread quickly after that. Animal rights groups picked it up. Advocacy pages began sharing her photo. Donations poured into the shelter. Messages of support flooded Nathan's inbox. But not all attention was welcome. One night, just after closing, Nathan found a folded piece of paper wedged under the windshield wiper of his truck. It read, "Enough. She comes back, or things get worse." No signature, no fingerprints. The sheriff took it seriously. More patrols, more calls to state authorities. But Nathan knew whoever was doing this was careful. Smart. He didn't leave enough behind to be caught easily. The only person who never seemed shaken was Junie. She had returned to her normal self, at least outwardly, chasing birds in the yard, greeting patients with tail wags, snoozing in sunbeams. But sometimes, when the clinic went quiet and the wind picked up, Nathan caught her staring at the door like she expected it to open. Then came the conference call. Diane had gathered a small group of shelter workers, investigators, and one former police officer turned consultant. Nathan listened as they laid out a potential trail. The man they were looking for had gone by several names: Jared, Paul, Rick, always tall, always with a dog, always leaving chaos behind. There was suspicion that he once worked for a short-lived research outfit, defunct now, that used behavioral stimulus on canines. "We think Junie was part of an experiment," Diane said. "One never sanctioned, probably illegal. But the problem is, the man never stays put long enough to catch." Nathan stared at the small scar above Junie's right shoulder, the place where one of the wires had been fused with her skin. "What happens if he tries to take her again?" "He won't," the consultant said. "Not if we're watching. We just need to give him a chance to reveal himself." The idea that followed was simple but risky. Release a controlled update online, a false location, just vague enough to seem believable. Then watch who shows up. Nathan was hesitant. Junie had already been through so much. But he understood the logic. And so, the trap was set. A social media post went live on a Friday afternoon. A grainy image of Junie in a field, with a caption referencing a rescue event just outside Grand Junction. The post spread fast. Animal lovers shared it. A handful of local accounts picked it up. 3 days later, a vehicle matching the description of the suspect's old SUV was spotted circling a rescue center 50 miles from Grand Junction. The license plate was partially obscured with tape, but a plate reader caught enough. Jared Coleman, wanted for animal cruelty, interstate transport violations, and obstruction. A team moved in. He wasn't there, but his car was. And inside the glove box, officers found a file. Notes. Dog names. Locations. Photos. One name was circled in red. Junie. Nathan's phone rang that night. Sheriff Blake. "We have a warrant, and enough for an arrest. We think he's still in the state. He's running scared now." Nathan stared out the clinic window, hand on Junie's back. He should be. The next few days passed like a waiting game. Every noise outside felt louder, every shadow deeper. But Junie seemed calmer than ever. She followed Nathan from room to room, never anxious, just steady. Then, on a Thursday morning, a stranger walked through the clinic door. He wore a ball cap, work boots, beard, dark jacket. "Need help?" Nathan asked from the counter, masking the unease building in his chest. "Yeah," the man said, looking around. "Got a dog with a limp. She's in the truck. Mind taking a look?" Nathan stepped carefully. "What kind of dog?" "Mix. Looks kinda like the one in your window." Junie was watching from the office. She let out a low growl. The man froze. And Nathan knew. He didn't say anything. Just pressed the emergency alert button under the counter. "Bring her in," Nathan said calmly. "Let's take a look." The man hesitated, then nodded. He turned toward the door. Sheriff's deputies were waiting outside. Jared Coleman didn't make it far. He was arrested on the spot. His truck was impounded. Inside, they found another homemade device, the same kind once buried in Junie's fur. Nathan exhaled for the first time in days. He turned to Junie. She had moved to the door, watching as deputies led the man away. Her tail didn't wag, but her eyes were clear. The clinic was quieter than usual in the days after Jared Coleman's arrest. News spread quickly in a town like Buckfield. Word got out about the charges, the video evidence, the attempts to reclaim Junie under false pretenses. The sheriff's office gave no official statements beyond confirming that Coleman had been taken into custody and was facing multiple counts related to animal abuse, illegal transport, and criminal trespass. But even without details, everyone knew enough to understand one thing. Junie had been targeted, and she had survived. Nathan sat at the front desk, flipping through the day's appointment schedule. Junie lay beside him, calm but watchful. Her behavior hadn't changed much since the arrest, but Nathan noticed subtle things, how she now took longer before lying down, how she still watched the door like it owed her answers. Several people had sent flowers. One family brought by a cake shaped like a bone with her name spelled in frosting. Someone else made a hand-painted sign that read, "Thank you for protecting Buckfield's bravest girl." Nathan hung it above the fireplace in the clinic's waiting room. The sheriff called every other day with updates. Coleman's truck had yielded more evidence, maps, dates, photographs, and receipts tying him to other missing dogs across several states. There was even a journal scrawled in cryptic shorthand referencing stimulus trials and target responses. It was horrifying, but it was what the prosecutors needed. Junie, meanwhile, took to following Nathan everywhere. Even places she'd previously avoided, like the exam room with the slippery floor or the grooming tub in the back. She stayed close, almost protective. One afternoon, Allie and her mom returned for the first time since the arrest. Junie was lying by the porch when their car pulled up, and as soon as she saw the girl, she trotted down the steps to meet her. Allie knelt in the grass. "I missed you. Did you miss me too?" Junie lowered her head against Allie's knee and stayed there. Allie's mom looked at Nathan. "We weren't sure if now was a good time, but she's been asking every day." "Now's perfect," he said. "Junie's happiest when she's with her." The three of them sat in the yard while the sun dipped low. Allie read from a new book, something about a raccoon and a magical forest. Junie listened with the same quiet intensity she reserved for vet visits and thunderstorms. Later that night, Nathan stood in the clinic kitchen stirring a pot of soup. Junie lay nearby with a blanket half pulled over her like a cape. The air outside had the scent of early fall, dry leaves and wood smoke. A reminder that time moved on, no matter what had happened. The phone rang. He wiped his hands and picked it up. "Nathan, it's Diane. Sorry to call late." "No problem. Everything okay?" "Actually, yes. Better than okay. I just got word from the Colorado State Animal Welfare Board. They want Junie to be a representative case for a new program. They're launching a campaign to raise awareness about hidden abuse and are creating legislation to require stricter checks on cross-state animal transport. They want to use her story with your permission." Nathan blinked. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." He looked at Junie, now sitting up, ears perked as if she knew. "Yes, absolutely." Diane explained that the campaign would include posters, school visits, and PSAs. Junie wouldn't have to travel far, but her story, her survival, would anchor it all. She had become more than a rescue. She was a symbol. After the call, Nathan crouched beside her. "Looks like you're going to be famous again. But this time for all the right reasons." Junie wagged once and licked his cheek. The next week passed with a strange mix of normal and extraordinary. People dropped by just to say hello. A local elementary school class mailed her a bundle of hand-drawn cards, each one featuring her floppy ears or bright eyes. One simply said, "You are brave." Nathan arranged to meet with Diane and the campaign team at a park in Denver. It would be Junie's first big outing since everything happened. He packed her travel bag the night before. Blanket, collapsible water bowl, snacks, her favorite squeaky duck. Then he sat on the porch with her for a while, watching the stars blink awake. "We've come a long way," he whispered. The drive to Denver was uneventful. Junie curled in the back seat for most of it, occasionally lifting her head to look out the window. The meeting took place in a shaded part of City Park. Diane brought her own rescued hound, and a few other volunteers showed up with rescued dogs of their own. The campaign photographer, a soft-spoken man with silver-rimmed glasses, snapped dozens of photos while Junie played in the grass. There was no posing, just capturing her as she was. A survivor. Later, a short interview was recorded. Nathan sat on a bench with Junie beside him and spoke about the day he found her, the carrier in the woods, the slow unraveling of her past. When it was done, the photographer crouched to Junie's level and said, "You're going to help a lot of dogs, you know that?" She nudged his hand in response. That night, they stayed in a small guest house outside the city. Junie curled on the bed, not at the foot, but right beside Nathan. He woke once in the early hours to find her watching the window, but not afraid. Just observant. Just prepared. When they returned to Buckfield the next day, the clinic felt warmer than before. Maybe it was just the weather. Maybe it was the weight that had finally lifted. The sheriff called again that evening. "Just got confirmation. Coleman took a plea. He's going to serve time. Not as much as we'd like, but it's not nothing. And his plea came with a condition. He has to surrender any future claims to animals he's had contact with, including Junie." Nathan let out a slow breath. She's really free now. She always was. But now it's on paper. Nathan hung up and knelt beside Junie. She was gnawing on a new bone, happy and unaware. Or maybe she knew exactly what that phone call meant. That weekend, Nathan hosted a small event on the clinic lawn. Just a picnic-style gathering for anyone who wanted to stop by and see Junie. Allie helped decorate with paw print banners. Her mom brought lemonade. The sheriff's department brought dog treats in little paper bags. Families came. Retirees, school kids, people who had watched from afar but felt moved to be part of Junie's story. She handled it all like a seasoned ambassador. Calm, kind, a little shy, but always attentive. She let children pet her. She sniffed every plate, but never stole a bite. And when Allie gave a short speech thanking Junie for being the bravest dog in the world, she sat in front of the girl and gently lifted a paw. Everyone clapped. After the crowd left and the lawn was quiet again, Nathan sat under the oak tree with Junie stretched out beside him. He thought back to that first day. The mud, the woods, the look in her eyes that had stopped him cold. She had asked him to follow. And he had. The days following the community picnic moved with the steady rhythm of early fall. Buckfield's trees began to flush with orange and red, and the air grew crisp enough that Nathan pulled his fleece from the closet each morning before opening the clinic. The scent of burning firewood drifted across town, mixing with the familiar smell of pine and morning frost. Junie had returned to her routines, but something had shifted. She was more than just the clinic dog now. More than just the rescue no one could touch a few months ago. Nathan watched as she wandered the clinic halls with gentle curiosity, slipping her head into exam rooms to check on recovering patients or curling up beside anxious animals until they calmed. She didn't need a leash. She didn't need command words. She just knew where she was needed. People had started calling her the heart dog of Buckfield. Nathan heard it first from Mrs. Fenley, a widow who brought her aging beagle in every month for arthritis treatments. "That dog of yours has a gift," she said one morning, while Junie gently rested beside her trembling beagle. "He hasn't let another dog near him since his sister died. But look at him now." And it wasn't just the pets. The clients lingered more after their appointments. Some asked if Junie would come over for a moment before they left. Kids asked to pet her. Adults seemed to find comfort just watching her sit in the sun by the window. Nathan didn't do anything to encourage it, but he didn't discourage it either. Junie had found her place. One Tuesday, Diane called again. The awareness campaign had taken off beyond their expectations. A major regional network had picked up the story and wanted to produce a short documentary. Not just about Junie, but about the broader issue: rescues that went missing, gaps in animal transport oversight, the hidden problem of non-certified behavioral training camps. "They'd like to visit Buckfield," Diane said. "Film a few scenes. Maybe interview some folks who've interacted with her. Would you be okay with that?" Nathan hesitated, not because he didn't trust the team, but because he didn't want Junie to be overwhelmed. "We'll do it quietly," Diane promised. "They're sensitive. They know it's about her comfort, not a spectacle." Nathan agreed. The film crew arrived on a foggy morning the following week. Just 3 people: a director, a camera operator, and a sound technician. They were careful not to startle Junie, letting her sniff their equipment and follow them around before they did anything serious. The first interview took place on the clinic porch. Nathan sat in his usual chair, Junie curled at his feet, and answered questions about the early days. He spoke slowly, only pausing once when asked what made him follow her into the woods that first day. "It was her eyes," he said. "She didn't look scared. She looked like she had something to show me, like she wasn't asking for help. She was inviting me to see something." The crew filmed her at the school gate the next morning, just watching as Allie waved from inside the fence. Junie didn't bark. She didn't jump. She just waited for a few seconds, then turned and trotted back to Nathan's truck. They shot scenes of her wandering the clinic freely, greeting animals and laying in patches of sun. They filmed Nathan talking to clients, treating a rabbit with an ear infection, checking in on a recovering dachshund. When it was done, the director sat with Nathan at the front desk. "I've worked on a lot of these projects," she said. "You usually hear about the dogs who get rescued, but we don't always hear what they become. This is what people need to see. Not just what she escaped, but what she brings." The documentary was slated to air in January. They promised to send a copy for local viewing. Nathan agreed to host a screening at the community center. After the crew left, things returned to normal. Or as normal as they could be after your dog became a quiet celebrity. Then, one morning in early October, a man pulled into the clinic parking lot driving a van with Oregon plates. Nathan noticed it because he didn't recognize the vehicle, and visitors from out of state were rare in Buckfield, unless they were lost. The man stepped out holding a thick folder under one arm. Mid-50s, gray hair, glasses, plaid shirt tucked into jeans. "You the one who runs this place?" he asked as Nathan stepped outside. "I am. Can I help you with something?" The man glanced down at Junie, who had padded up beside Nathan and was watching him closely. "My name's Stephen Corley. I used to be with the Cascade Behavioral Sciences Institute. It's not around anymore. Shut down about 5 years back. But I saw your dog in the article. The one who was fitted with the embedded device. I think I know what program she came out of." Nathan felt his throat tighten. "You were part of it?" "I was one of the people who helped whistleblow. I didn't know the full extent until the end. Once I did, I turned over everything I had. They buried a lot of it, though. But your dog, she fits the profile. I've never been able to forget those eyes." He handed Nathan the folder. Inside were files, training schedules, vet logs, diagrams of early prototypes. Several photos showed dogs strapped with early versions of the same harness Nathan had removed from Junie months earlier. One photo showed a litter, 7 puppies in a pen, each with different colored tape collars. The smallest had a green collar and 2 big ears. Nathan stared. "That's her." Stephen nodded. "We called her Echo then. She never responded like the others. They called it failure to adapt. I called it resistance. She never let them break her." Nathan flipped through more pages. Some notes were dated just weeks before the institute shut down. Others contained initials, JC, next to entries labeled Off-Site Trial Candidate. "Jared Coleman," Nathan said. "He came around toward the end," Stephen confirmed. "Volunteered as a handler. Said he had private funding. I didn't trust him. Turns out I was right. He took at least 2 of the dogs." Nathan felt a mix of revulsion and relief. Revulsion at the history. Relief that more truth was coming to light. "Why bring this to me?" "Because I owe that dog," Stephen said. "And because maybe this helps make sure it never happens again." He didn't stay long. Just long enough to give Nathan the folder, pet Junie gently, and leave with a quiet, "Take care of her." That night, Nathan scanned every page into a secure folder and sent copies to Diane and the sheriff. The next morning, he found Junie lying in the yard staring toward the woods behind the clinic. She didn't bark, didn't move. Just watched the trees swaying in the breeze. Nathan stepped beside her. "You came from somewhere dark," he said quietly, "but you never let it own you." She glanced up, wagged her tail once, then looked back at the forest. Whatever she saw out there, it didn't scare her anymore. By the time early March rolled around, the last snow had mostly melted from Buckfield's main roads. Mud puddles lined the curbs, and the air had the earthy scent of thawed ground and distant pine. The clinic had begun to fill with more springtime cases, early litters of kittens, dogs needing flea medication, the usual flurry of appointments as pet owners emerged from winter hibernation. Junie took it all in stride. She had found her rhythm, the gentle pulse of days filled with small joys. She greeted each morning by stretching across the front rug, rolling onto her back, and offering Nathan a look that said, "Well, what are we doing today?" And Nathan always answered her with the same dry smile and pat on the head. They were a team, even when the day held nothing but routine. But that particular march marked something more. Nathan hadn't told anyone yet, not even Diane, but he'd made a decision. One that had been growing quietly inside him since the night of the documentary viewing, when Junie had sat so still and content in the center of a room full of people. He had decided it was time to write the final report. Not for the sheriff, not for the campaign, for Junie, for her record, her history, her legacy. He wanted to tell her full story, top to bottom, from the moment he first saw her on that hill above the community center to the porch where she now lay watching the squirrels. So he did. Every night, after the clinic closed and the porch light dimmed, Nathan sat in the back office with a legal pad and wrote longhand. He filled page after page, not just facts, feelings, the way she'd refused the crate, but accepted a blanket. The way her eyes had stayed on him, even when she bolted. The way she'd let Allie touch her before she'd let any other child close. He wrote about the crate in the woods, the harness, the makeshift devices. He wrote about Coleman, the arrest, the note under the windshield. And he wrote about healing. The scarf in winter. The tiny tail wags when people said her name. The peace she'd found in simply being home. Junie lay beside him each night as he wrote, as though she knew her story was finally being stitched together in full. Mid-March brought the symposium. Nathan had nearly backed out twice, worried about the travel, the noise, the possibility of crowds. But Junie surprised him. She hopped into the truck like it was any other drive and lay calm the entire 2-hour trip to the convention center outside Denver. The event was smaller than expected. Maybe 30 people. Veterinarians, shelter volunteers, animal behaviorists, a few therapy animal trainers. No flashing lights, no cameras, just a quiet room with chairs and a podium. Nathan spoke for 20 minutes. He didn't use notes. He didn't need to. The story lived in his memory like a film reel. He spoke about trauma, not just physical, but behavioral. How animals lose more than muscle when they're harmed. They lose rhythm, safety, the trust in their own signals. He talked about re-establishing that trust, not through obedience, but through presence, through waiting, through listening. When he finished, he sat beside Junie, who was resting on a mat by the wall. The audience clapped, not with enthusiasm, but with gravity. Some people wiped tears. Afterward, one of the behaviorists approached. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, but kind. "I've seen a lot of cases," she said, "but I've never seen a dog lead a recovery like this one. You didn't fix her. You just followed her." "She didn't need fixing," Nathan said. "She just needed time." The woman nodded. "She ever show any behavioral scarring? Unusual reactivity?" "Not since fall," Nathan said. "It's like she made a choice to let it go." Later, in the parking lot, as he buckled Junie's harness and gave her a biscuit, he smiled. "You're not just recovered," he said. "You're teaching us now." The ride home was silent, except for the sound of Junie breathing in the back seat, paws twitching as she drifted to sleep. Nathan didn't play music. he just drove, the road unwinding beneath the tires like a thread pulling him back to where they began. By April, the Junie Fund had funded 4 emergency surgeries, sponsored trauma treatment for 7 rescued animals, and begun construction on a small trauma recovery enclosure at Diane's shelter. One morning, a delivery truck arrived with a plaque and a metal bench engraved with Junie's name and the fund's motto, "Where healing begins." Nathan placed the bench under the oak tree beside the clinic. Clients sat there while waiting for appointments, kids read books there, and Junie, she liked to sit under it, not on it, as if guarding something sacred. Allie turned 10 that spring. She asked to have her birthday party at the clinic. "Not inside," she clarified. "Just on the lawn. With Junie." Nathan agreed. The clinic hosted 30 kids that day. There was cake, a bubble machine, and a small area where children could draw pictures of their pets on canvas sheets. Junie stayed close to Allie the whole time, occasionally wandering to check on the other kids but always circling back. At the end of the party, Allie's mom gave Nathan a small envelope. Inside was a certificate, hand-drawn. Awarded to Junie for bravery, loyalty, and the best tail wags, from the birthday girl. Nathan smiled and taped it next to the Queen of Kindness drawing. By summer, things slowed down again. The days were long. The clinic's porch stayed warm well into the evenings. Junie's fur grew thicker, glossier. She looked younger somehow, like the burdens of her past had finally stopped pulling her back. One afternoon, a new client came in with an older cat. She paused at the doorway and gasped softly. "Is that her? The Junie from the story?" Nathan nodded. "She looks so calm," the woman said. "I always imagined she'd be different, more fragile." "She's anything but fragile," Nathan said. "She just decided to live." Junie stood and walked over to the woman's cat carrier, sniffed it once, then lay beside it as the client settled into a chair. "I lost a dog to someone like that once," the woman said. "I never knew where he went. I hope he found someone like you." Nathan didn't reply. He just reached down and rested a hand on Junie's back. That night, he finished the report. He ended it with a paragraph written slowly, carefully. "Junie was never mine. She was always her own. But she let me walk beside her. She let me witness her healing, her strength, her stillness. She let me follow her into the woods that day, not because she needed saving, but because she needed someone to see. And once I saw, I never looked away." He printed a copy, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it in the clinic's safe. On the outside, he wrote, "To be opened when someone asks who she really was." Years later, someone would. But for now, Junie remained where she had always been, by the porch, under the oak tree, walking the fence line, lying by the stove, watching the world from a place of quiet dignity. A puppy once refused shelter. Now she gave it. Not through walls or locks or rules, but simply by staying. Word count: 4,993 words. Buckfield's first frost came earlier than usual. One morning, Nathan stepped out of the clinic to find the grass glinting with a fine silver sheen, the breath from his nose visible in the dawn light. Junie, ever sensitive to seasonal shifts, stepped gingerly across the porch, her paws making tiny prints in the frost as she sniffed the air like it carried a message just for her. By now, her morning rituals had evolved. She still waited by the school gate on occasion, but more often she roamed the back property in the early hours, checking the perimeter, stopping at familiar trees, circling the shed where the old crates were stored. She didn't act nervous. She acted deliberate, like the ground itself was part of her routine. Nathan watched her from the porch, coffee in hand, marveling once again at how far she had come. The documentary's release date was approaching, and Diane had sent a mock-up of the promotional poster. It featured Junie sitting in the grass outside the clinic, sun behind her, eyes bright and steady. Above her head were the words, "Rescued isn't the end. It's the beginning." Nathan had to read it twice. It was perfect. He pinned a copy on the clinic bulletin board where patients waited. Junie seemed unbothered by her new celebrity status, but Nathan caught several clients taking photos of the poster as they left. One morning, an envelope arrived addressed simply to "The Dog Who Changed Everything." Inside was a letter from a girl in Kansas who had seen a newspaper article and begged her parents to let her adopt a rescue. Attached was a photo of a black and white mutt with one ear that refused to stand up straight. The girl had named her Hope. Nathan read the letter twice, then showed it to Junie. "Looks like you've started a trend," he said. Thanksgiving crept closer. Nathan decided to close the clinic for 3 full days, a luxury he hadn't allowed himself in years. He told clients well in advance, arranged backup with the on-call vet in the next town, and made plans to stay home with Junie and a small turkey. The night before the holiday, Allie and her mother stopped by with a basket of baked good. Junie greeted them at the door, wagging her tail as Allie handed over a small envelope. "This is for you," she said. But Junie has to open it. Inside was a hand-drawn card showing a cartoon version of Junie sitting on a throne, wearing a crown. Around her were animals of every kind: cats, birds, a hedgehog. At the bottom, in bold crayon, were the words, "Thank you for being the Queen of Kindness." Junie sniffed it carefully, then sat beside Allie like she understood every word. Nathan taped the drawing beside the fireplace. The holiday itself was quiet. Nathan cooked enough food for 3 people, even though it was just the 2 of them. He gave Junie a small plate of turkey, sweet potato, and green beans. She ate with unusual care, licking the plate clean, but never rushing. Later, as they sat on the porch watching the sky darken, Nathan looked down and said, "I used to think dogs came into our lives so we could fix them, but maybe you're here to fix us." Junie didn't respond, just leaned against his leg. December came in with sleet and short days. Snow dusted the mountain peaks, and the town lit up early with strings of warm white bulbs. Nathan found himself fielding more questions from neighboring towns, people wanting to visit, to meet Junie, to donate supplies or learn how to help. He asked Diane if they should start a fund, something official, something that could help other dogs who went through what Junie had. Diane loved the idea. Within a week, paperwork was filed for the Junie Fund. The mission? To provide medical care, trauma support, and long-term placement for rescue animals from suspected abusive or neglectful backgrounds. Not just dogs, all animals. Donations came faster than expected. The campaign documentary hadn't even aired yet. One evening, Nathan sat sorting donation forms when the phone rang. It was Sheriff Blake. "Thought you'd want to know. Coleman pled out. Final sentence handed down today. He won't be eligible for parole for at least 8 years. And part of the plea agreement includes a lifetime ban on animal ownership or handling." Nathan didn't say anything for a long moment. "He won't be anywhere near her ever again," the sheriff added. "Thanks for letting me know." He hung up and looked at Junie, who was curled by the wood stove with one paw twitching in sleep. "You did that," he whispered. "You kept going, and you made them see." The snow started falling for real in mid-December. Big flakes, the kind that stuck to Junie's back and melted slowly as she shook them off. The clinic stayed open, but most non-emergency appointments were rescheduled. People brought baked goods and holiday cards. Kids left small toys or drawings addressed to Junie. One child dropped off a tiny scarf, handmade from green yarn. Nathan tied it around Junie's neck. She kept it on for 2 full hours. The documentary finally aired the week before Christmas. The town held a viewing at the community center. Nathan hadn't been sure if he wanted to watch it with everyone else, but Allie's mom insisted. "You should see the way she's helped this town," she said. "It's not just you she changed." The room filled quickly. People brought blankets, cookies, hot cider. Kids sat cross-legged near the projector screen. When the film started, the room fell silent. The story unfolded slowly. Junie's discovery, the unraveling of her past, the investigation, the campaign, the change she inspired. Nathan's interviews were woven between clips of Junie with children, other animals, Diane at the shelter, and quiet moments at the clinic. When it ended, no one moved. Then Allie stood up and clapped. Others joined. The sound grew until the room echoed with applause. Junie, sitting beside Nathan, tilted her head. "That's for you," he whispered. In the following days, letters poured in from across the country. Rescue groups wanted to collaborate. Veterinary schools asked for Nathan to speak. Animal behaviorists reached out to study Junie's recovery. Nathan turned most of it down. He didn't want her turned into a brand or a mascot. He didn't want to uproot her or disrupt the peace she'd found. Instead, he set up a single event. One visit to a regional animal welfare symposium in early spring. He'd bring Junie, speak about the importance of trauma-informed care, and let her story speak for itself. Meanwhile, Junie stayed the queen of Buckfield. She rode with Nathan on house calls. She greeted delivery drivers. She kept nervous pets calm. She walked Allie to school when the weather was warm and curled by the fire, when the days turned cold again. One night, as snow blew against the windows and the fire crackled low, Nathan watched her sleeping and thought, "This is what survival looks like. Not just the breathing, the waking, the walking, but the becoming, the opening up again, the choosing to live without fear." Junie stirred in her sleep, tail twitching gently, and Nathan knew her journey wasn't done yet.